We'll deal with the second one first. I'd like to welcome Minister Coffey to the House and thank him for taking the matters on the adjournment. With two matters on the adjournment, I'll ask Senator Clochartaigh to speak on the second item as Senator Daly is not in the House at present.
Good morning, Mad. Les Harley, August Kefalter Dada. Thank you very much for coming in and for taking this matter on the adjournment. It's a very sad story, actually. It relates to a woman called Breach Cummins, who was a former journalist who had mental health issues. She fought eviction by Galway City Council from a council house that she was living in and was subsequently found dead in her flat. The night officials turned up looking for her to take back the keys of the house. The issue has also been highlighted by a former employee in the housing section of Galway City Council in a recently published book, Abuse of Power Because Councils Can, which also chronicles her own struggles with officials in City Hall. She was the tenant liaison officer with the council in September 2003 when she was first asked to accompany a neighbour of Ms Cummins to the offices of the local authority solicitors to help take out an injunction against Ms Cummins. She refused, believing it morally unethical to provide the council's legal team to a private citizen. She also refused to sign off on a statement made by a former neighbour of Ms Cummins that was to be used in evidence in the council's eviction case. The lady in question, Ms Grace, believed the statement was an off-the-record solicitor rant from an unreliable witness made years after she had left the flat and who did not want it used in court. The statement was used to paint a picture of Ms Cummins' alleged antisocial behaviour. 6 months after the first incident, Ms Grace was let go. She had been the council's first liaison officer, a role she had developed for 7 years, and funding was obtained to expand and develop the role, and 3 positions were created. So I'm raising a number of questions. I did raise them with the leader here one day, and he suggested I raise them on the adjournment here. The main question is whether you, Minister, feel you have a role in investigating the issues that have been highlighted in the book around the power of CEOs and unelected people in local authorities. That's at the core of the issue here, because although Breach Cummins suffered a very sad demise, the people in question, some of the characters in the book and the documents that have been put together in the book are quite serious, but they're people who eventually went on to bigger and better things. One of the people involved has gone on to become the manager and CEO of Sligo County Council, and this is why...
Senator Joby, that person can be identified from what you've said here. I mean, you can't identify...
Well, he's identified publicly in the book. It's all on the public record. It's a matter of public record.
So he's not here to defend himself, so I don't ask you to refer to somebody that's not here to defend themselves.
Well, in a general sense, I think it's important because the issue I'm raising with the Minister is obviously former TD and now President Michael D. Higgins at the time stated that he felt there was a need for a full investigation into this case. And it's about the way certain executives in city and county councils do their jobs, because the particular CEO in question has given talks at certain public functions where he talks about key leadership attributes. And one of the statements he made in that situation about politicians in the media, Senator, was that they were...
You'll have to refrain from referring to somebody who's not in this House to defend themselves. So.
Yeah, but I do believe that it's a matter of record that this book has been published.
Yeah,
it's out there in the public domain.
The person that you're referring to is not in this House, and you know the rules of the House. You're not allowed to speak about somebody who's not here to defend themselves.
Well, the question relates then also to the attitude that some potentially that CEOs of local authorities can have to politicians and what they think about the way they do their work. That they have very huge disregard for the way things are done and that the role they have, and they have very, very strong powers over what they decide, because it will be clear from the evidence that is outlined from minutes that were from documents that were presented to councillors at Galway City Council in relation to the Breach Cummins case, for example, that certain officers held great strength and were able to exercise very strong powers, and some were quite relentless in the way they followed through on what they felt were their powers in a case like this. I'm not sure if the Minister who is here, or the Minister himself, or his officials in particular, have had a chance to go through the evidence that's presented in the book. If not, I would suggest they do that. It's all factual evidence based on minutes of meetings, correspondence, and all of it was FOI through the relevant authorities. But I think that Breach Cummins does deserve another hearing. She does, and her family, I know, want to find out the truth about what happened, and they certainly want to make sure that officials in local authorities can't overstep the mark, can't hound people out of houses, and certainly that we wouldn't see another case like the Breach Cummins case happening again.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Seanad Ó Clochartaigh. I'm happy to respond to this adjournment on behalf of Minister Alan Kelly and to clarify some of the matters that you raise. This is indeed a tragic case which has been the subject of an inquest, and I am certain that it has been very difficult for all concerned, and I intend to treat it as sensitively as possible and avoid going into any unnecessary detail. This case was concerned with the repossession of a social housing dwelling, and as with any such matter, responsibility for action in this instance rested with the Housing Authority. The repossession was undertaken on foot of a court decision. It would not therefore be appropriate for me to comment on the action taken by the Housing Authority in that regard. Insofar as general provisions and procedures relating to issues concerning the performance of functions by local authority officials may be relevant to the case in question, the position is that local authorities have put in place a multiple-stage procedure for dealing with customer complaints, including those relating to the conduct of officials. The first of which is discussing the complaint at the point of service, as it is usually the quickest and most efficient way to address the matter. If a complainant is still unhappy with the outcome of the first stage, a formal complaint can then be made to the authority's customer services officer. If matters have not been resolved following engagement with the local authority, it is of course open to a complainant to bring the matter to the attention of the Office of the Ombudsman. Furthermore, Part 15 of the Local Government Act 2001 provides a legislative basis for the local government's services ethical framework. It places a statutory duty on every member and every employee of a local authority and of every member of every committee to maintain proper standards of integrity, conduct and concern for the public interest. Codes of practice for employees and elected members are underpinned by Part 15 of the Act. Each local authority has an ethics registrar, and any breaches of the ethical framework should be reported to that person. Where an ethics registrar becomes aware of a possible contravention of Part 15 of the 2001 Act by an official, he or she is obliged to bring the matter to the attention of the Chief Executive or to the Cathaoirleach of the local authority, in the case of a contravention by the Chief Executive. The Chief Executive or the Cathaoirleach is obligated to take action which may include investigative or disciplinary procedures, referral of the matter to the Director of Public Prosecutions, or any other course of action considered appropriate in the circumstances. It is appropriate that any complaints regarding the provision of a service or the performance of a function which, it is claimed, is not in accordance with the rules, practice or policy of the organisation or the generally accepted principles of equity and good administrative practice are first dealt with locally in accordance with an authority's customer complaints procedures, and that reports of non-compliance with the ethical framework are dealt with as provided for by Part 15 of the 2001 Act. Responsibility for local authority staff and their conduct rests with the Chief Executive, who in turn is accountable to the elected members for the performance of executive functions to implement council policy. It is relevant to note in this regard that the governance and oversight role of the elected council has been strengthened in a number of respects by provisions in the Local Government Reform Act 2014. In the context of the case in question, I have been informed that a detailed report on the matter was presented to the elected members of Galway City Council on the 28th of February 2005 and was the subject of a lengthy debate in relation to the handling of the case. I understand that the report informed members fully of the details of the case and specifically acknowledged that the actions of officials are open to review by the members of the Council. The report was considered by the elected members. The record shows that, whereas it was proposed that an independent review of the case be carried out by someone from outside the authority, this proposal was not adopted, but the Council adopted a motion reading that the City Council accept the recommendations set out in the City Manager's report by a margin of 10 to 4 with 1 abstention. Regarding the question of a possible independent investigation in relation to the handling of the matter in question by Galway City Council, the main statutory provisions relating to the holding of local inquiries are contained in sections 83 to 86 of the Local Government Act 1941. These provide for undertaking further inquiries if considered to be warranted. However, in this case, taking particular account of the decision of the elected members of Galway City Council in relation to the report presented to them, Minister Kelly is of the view that consideration of an independent investigation in accordance with the provisions of sections 83 to 86 of the Local Government Act 1941 is not warranted.
You have 1 minute.
I thank the Minister for the answer on behalf of the Senior Minister, but I totally reject his answer. Really, I think what we see here is a situation of the local authority investigating the local authority. We've had lots of calls for other organisations in this state not to be investigated by themselves. I also have evidence as well that one of the individuals involved in this case has given a leadership talk about how to run local government, in which he says, when you're dealing with difficult cases, identify the loss and structure your argument accordingly, keep close to your adversaries, focus on the message, not the messenger, manipulate the debate, have an anchor and be relentless. And I think that definitely was the tactic that was used in the Breach Cummins case. I think it's only fair and right that we do have an independent investigation. I do think we need people outside of Galway City Council to take a look at the facts of this case once more. I do think the Minister himself should have a role in this. He should be absolutely clear that something like the Breach Cummins case could never happen again. And I think that her family deserve the closure in this situation, and I think you should I would implore you to go back to the Senior Minister and say, let's stand outside this organisation, let's make sure the Galway City Council is above question, and let's make sure that real justice was done in this case.
Thank you, Senator. Minister, do you want to reply?
Thank you, Seanad Eireann. Look, whilst I will acknowledge the concern you raise, and I know you raise it with good intention, I do have to reiterate the view of Minister Kelly that in consideration of the independent investigation in accordance with the provisions of section 83 to 86 of the Local Government Act 1941, Minister Kelly feels that an independent investigation is not warranted in this case. And I would also refer to what I had earlier stated, that if matters haven't been resolved satisfactorily with a local authority of any levels of complaint, it is always open to a complainant to bring the matter to the attention of the Office of the Ombudsman also. Thank you, Seanad.
Thank you. The House stands adjourned till 1:15 next Tuesday.